Miss Jackie Greenbaum, my friend. One of my teachers stopped me in the hallway and told me to tie my shoelace before I tripped myself. I walked over by the bathroom entrance and I knelt down to tie the frayed shoestring. "You fat butt tub-a-lard," yelled someone as loud as they could. I looked up real fast to see what was happening, but I continued tying my shoe as I watched a large group of boys following and mocking a girl named Jackie Greenbaum. She was a very quiet girl who sat across from me in Mrs. Cherry's 4th grade class. She was really heavy-set, and there were these little bitty pot scars all over her face. "You don't need to make fun of her like that," I said as they walked by me. "Shut up, Dumbo," yelled one of the boys. Dumbo the Dumb Orphan was what everyone called me at the orphanage as well as at school. When they passed where I was sitting, one of the boys kicked the bottom of my shoe as hard as he could, causing my knee to hit the wall. Quickly, I jumped to my feet and walked toward him. He reached out and pushed my face with his open hand, causing me to fall back against the wall. I watched when Jackie made a right turn and walked real quick into the girls' bathroom. One of the boys ran over, pushed the bathroom door open, and yelled, "Sit on the toilet for a while, lard butt. Maybe some of that fat will go down when you flush it." The group of boys began to laugh and then continued on down the hallway to their classrooms. I sat back down on the floor and once again began to tie my shoelace. When I stood up, Jackie come walking out of the bathroom. She was wiping her eyes with toilet paper. I watched her as she turned the corner, leading for the front door of the school building. I ran over to the corner and I yelled out, "Ain't you going to class?" She never even turned around. She just kept on walking. I stood watching her as she went down the front steps and headed towards Spring Park School. I laid my books down on the floor and then I ran after her. "Why ain't you going to class?" I asked as I ran up behind her. Still, she said nothing. "Why ain't you going to class?" I said as I ran out in front of her to stop her. I stopped directly in front of her and I just stood there. "You're going to get in trouble. You ain't supposed to talk to girls," she said. We boys from the orphanage were not allowed to talk to girls. That applied to girls in the orphanage as well as any girl at school. That was the rule, and no boy was ever allowed to break it. Mother Winters, the head matron, told us that talking leads to sex, and there will be none of that nonsense. "You going to tell on me?" I asked her. She looked at me without answering. I saw that her eyes were red and her chin was quivering. Then she sat down on the grass and placed her face into the palm of her hands. "They call me Dumbo all the time 'cause my ears stick out," I said. "I know," she mumbled. "Just 'cause my ears stick out don't make me no real Dumbo like the elephant." "It hurts me when they call me fat," she said as she started to cry. "I can't help being big and fat." "We're going to go back in before we get into trouble, okay?" I asked her. Slowly she got off the ground and the two of us walked back toward the school building. We both stopped at the water fountain to get a drink. Then I followed her back into the classroom. When we entered, Mrs. Cherry had already started the lesson. As she continued talking, she motioned for the two of us to sit down in our assigned seats. All at once, Jackie broke into tears and started bawling. Mrs. Cherry walked over to a desk and knelt down beside her. "What's wrong, dear?" she asked. Jackie said not a word. She just cried and cried and cried, and she shook her head back and forth and then laid it down on her desk. "Roger, you come with me," instructed Mrs. Cherry as she headed for the doorway. I got up from my desk and I walked out into the hallway. "What did you do to Jackie?" she asked me. "I didn't do nothing, honest, Miss Cherry, I didn't," I told her. "Then why is she so upset?" she inquired. "Some of the boys were calling her fat things and all." I stood up watching through the doorway as one of the boys who had been teasing Jackie stuck his finger in his nose. Then he reached over and wiped his finger on Jackie's hair with a booger on it. The entire class started laughing. "Back to your desk, Roger," said the teacher as she looked around the corner of the doorway. The entire classroom fell silent. As I headed back to my desk, that same boy once again stuck his finger in his nose and held it out, waiting for me to pass him by. I stopped, turned around, and walked around the entire classroom and made my way back to my own seat. When I arrived at my desk, I reached over, picked up a book, and I just sat there looking at the boy. The boy reached over to wipe his finger and the booger on Jackie's sweater. When he did, I threw the book at him as hard as I could. The book hit the boy on the finger, knocking him clean out of his desk and onto the floor. Then I ran as fast as I could and I stood behind Mrs. Jerry. Within minutes we were in the principal's office, and we were there for more than 2 hours trying to get to the bottom of what all had happened. The bully was taken to the hospital to repair his broken finger. I got a severe paddling at school, and then I got another beating later that afternoon when I got back to the orphanage. Once again I was called to the front office of the orphanage, and I was told that I was nothing more than a stupid little criminal. They told me that it was just a matter of time before I would be sent off to the big prison for kids. By the age of 10, I did not care much about anything anymore. I did not even care about myself or what someone might do to me or think of me. I was already 95% dead inside anyways. I had very little feelings left. The only feelings I can remember having were being scared and fearful all the time. There was just something deep down inside of me that made me hate bullies with a passion. Even though I was scared and shaking, I always stood up for myself, and I always stood up for everyone else who was being pushed around. I cannot count the times I was beaten up and left lying on the ground with a bloody nose or a black eye or two. As the years passed, my record at the orphanage got thicker and thicker and thicker with disciplinary reports. But today, I look upon those files and my scars and black eyes and bloody noses as somewhat of a trophy given to me by my friends.